So this is Cowpoke again, doing this here episode. This is a making of sort of thing. Now normally there'd be a rambly part where we go on about something else, and I'm going to do that here. But because we have news on Robotech, the sister series we do, we have news on Robotech. So I just thought it's good. We did Transformers Meet Robotech. We're the first people to do that. Calcat and Mark's Cards did that. It was a video series, aired in the 2000s, and put it up on YouTube in 2014, and then again in several other versions. There was a 2021 release of it all, 3 miniseries stories as well. Yeah, and Transtech, Transformers with Robotech. That's what that is. Yeah. So after Beast Machines with Transtech, we did Transtech. Yeah. So that's what we did. For many years, Robotech has been under the purview of Harmony Gold, and you could not get the Japanese versions of Macross and Robotech over here, and yeah, so you couldn't get them over there because Armando Mugama and the producers over there. I don't know why that guy is still there. Why does he care anymore? It's like I don't get it. But I can't explain that. And we've been over all the different iterations of Robotech and what it is. It was a 3 discrete Japanese series. It was the Macross Saga. It was Space Cavalry Southern Cross, and Space Climber Metsu Piada, or the New Generation. Yeah, over here. There were 3 invasions. There was the invasion by the Zentradi and the Miltrandi, and there was an invasion by the Robotech Masters in the second one, and then the Invid in the final one. And the big cliffhanger at the end of the Invid one was Rick Hunter's ship never emerged from hyperspace. So in the Transtech series, Rick Hunter's ship disappeared into Transformers land. It was in the Transformers universe. That's where it was. But at the end, he gets home. Now the interesting thing is we also have the Japanese version of this from our classic DVD collection from the 2000s, and we can't port that, of course. It's got a little bit of copyright on it. We're not going to do that anyway. But we do also have Macross 7 and Macross. We have a sort of a crappy bootleg of Frontier. Why bother with that? And we don't have Delta, but that other one. All the Macross spin-offs. We have the movie, Do You Remember Love? Several versions of it. But we can't do a parody of that because we couldn't do justice. Some fans have asked about that. But yes, there's new news. But I wanted to point out in the Japanese version that in the Invid invasion, it was not connected to Robotech at all originally. The Space Climber Matsushita was its own series. The Expeditionary Force was not Rick Hunter. The Expeditionary Force was just Jupiter section coming to rescue the Earth. And Rick Hunter wasn't there. There was no cliffhanger in the Japanese version. Did not exist. Anyway, jump ahead to 87 when they tried to make Robotech the Sentinels. And they made some Jack McKinney books. That was a pseudonym for 2 guys. Yeah, so not us, but 2 other people. Obviously, we were kids then. Could have been us. Yeah, so we've been doing these Robotech parodies for years. They were on video, they were on DVD, and then they put it up on YouTube. If there was any music taken out of the first, we removed it, put in our own music. It's fairly easy to do. Along with our other fan films, Star Crackers, and we do Star Trek fan films, Starship Chimera, Starship Locations, Strange Worlds, that kind of thing. But we also do Robotech and Transformers on this channel. The only thing we're rambling on about this is because I watched Comic-Con 2022 Robotech panel. Somebody recorded it online, and I watched it on YouTube. And there's news. So we got some Robotech news I thought I would go into here. So basically, back in 2007, we had the Shadow Chronicles with Tommy Yune and crew promising to do more of them. They never did. But we got a hold of the But what we did those two. We got a hold of the books, of course, and the comic books and the other spin-offs and things, and gleaned from the story what Shadow Rising, the sequel, would have been about. So we created the Endless Circle in 2015, and the Return of the Shadows and the Shadow Children, two spin-offs of that series, dealing with what happened to Brick Hunter and crew after they got home, and what do they do during Next Generation, during Matsupita. When they got back and the Invid were defeated, what happened? Well, the Invid were the central bad guys in that again, but it was the Invid regent who came back, because in this universe he wasn't necessarily defeated completely at the Battle of Optera. He was around, so he shows up. Yeah, so I directed some of those. So yeah, that was fun. And we've always wanted to come back to it. And we're definitely gonna do more Star Trek after the Transformers here, because we switch off back and forth. But if you guys want to start writing a script about the Sentinels, in a revised version of the Sentinels, where because of the Transformers, the Masters didn't attack, and the Centrati didn't attack, because we can't really film Centrati, it's kind of impossible. And the version of the Sentinels would be different. Just so happens that 2022 is when the Sentinels took place. 2022, 23 is when it started in the before the Masters, about 5 years before the Masters saga. So in 2022, that would be right now. So Rick Hunter's wedding to Lisa Hayes, and then off from there. So it would be concurrent. So, yes, we're going to do a Sentinels thing, hopefully by holiday season, and that'd be pushing it, but if we can come up with something, that would be awesome to do that. Because now I don't go about San Jose Comic-Con, okay? The Robotech people said that the guy that directed, they're still going ahead with that movie they keep talking about for like 20 years, and they got a new director. They got the guy that directed the Uncharted video game thing, of which Uncharted Gemelt was ripping off the title from years ago with the Star Trek guy. Uncharted the video game, which was a movie. It was all right. He would not be my first choice to direct Robotech. I would be the first choice to direct Robotech, of course. But no, I would get somebody that's familiar with the Transformer material as well as the other stuff. I would get somebody that likes that kind of thing, likes character development. It's basically a war story with a love triangle with robots in it and spaceships and things. It's got to be somebody that actually understands that. Maybe the guy that did the Bumblebee, maybe. But no. I'm thinking Christopher Columbus or Rob Zemeckis or something like that. Maybe even David Yates. Somebody that understands weird fantasy, but also story. Even James Gunn would work, but he'd have to he's at Marvel. But yeah, it's not my first choice. This other guy is not my first choice, but I'm not deciding. I'm a writer, so I don't decide. I produce my own fan films. Nobody knows. I don't decide any of that stuff. There was a YouTuber, redheaded, dyed redhead, probably wearing a wig. A YouTuber with red hair going on about different kinds of Star Trek and stuff, and the writers, blaming all the writers for messing up the new ages of Star Trek, and I commented in there. We commented in the comment thread, because it was kind of like the San Diego Comic-Con thing, blaming the writers for not producing more Robotech is kind of the same thing as not producing proper Star Trek in their opinion. And it's like, you can't blame the writers, it's the producers. The writers are in the echelon of Hollywood, even on TV, in reality TV, the writers are not they're not responsible for anything. Basically, you have only if you're doing independent fan films like my fan films here, Gale, Calicat, Mars Cars, only do we control the production and the directing and the writing. That's very rare. It does not all, no. Very rare you get a guy like Joss Whedon back in the day, despite his foibles, or Zack Snyder back in the day, or James Gunn. It's very, very, very uncommon that you get somebody like that writes part of the story and directs it. Taika Waititi writes part of the story and directs it. Also, not a bad choice for a Robotech. Taika Waititi, not be a bad choice. I think that would work. But you're gonna have to find a young cast, and they're gonna have to be Japanese. So that's your trick to do a Robotech movie. Don't make them white guys. The only white guy in the cast is Roy Fokker, the half-brother of Rick Hunter. He's white. The only one. You can say that Lisa Hayes kind of is, but kind of not. Sort of tallish. Back in the day, 10 years ago, the lady that played Black Widow would be perfect, but not anymore. Lisa Hayes. No, it wouldn't work now. Unless they were doing New Generation, and then it would. If they were saying it's 2022 and it's New Generation, then it kind of would. But yeah, it's... Lin Min May has to be a singer who is Japanese and can sing really well. It's got to be Lin Min May. It's got to be Japanese and can sing really well. If she can't, it's not going to work. Don't make it an American pop star. It's a Japanese pop star. That's going to work. They didn't even talk about that stuff. They talked about how the production got together with the Japanese side and said, "All right, we're gonna the production that Sony and Crunchyroll, they bought each other out, and they're like, okay, some of the Japanese stuff we can't air, but some we can. We can't air the Do You Remember Love movie, but we can air all the other stuff because that was not Big West. That was somebody else that did the movie. Yeah, something like that. Big West did the other stuff. Studio New, I think is it. Yeah, the other piece out there did the other one. So they gotta meet up with Studio New. I don't know why they didn't mention them because they were part of it too. They met across Plus and 7. Yeah, so I don't know where they were, but yeah, and Frontier, they have to make a deal with them too, distributing the other stuff here. I don't know. I have a copy of the Macross 7 from Japan, imported. And it's got all the subtitles and everything, and you can copy that one because it's an import, but it's really confusing, so don't bother. I'm not going to do it. I am so. They didn't talk about the Shadow Chronicles or anything like that. They did that. They implied that there are fan films out there that already did it. Yes, sweet vision. Shadow Children and Shadow's Return. Yeah, we did an adaptation of the thing. I'm glad that we had a shout out at San Diego Comic Con. They probably didn't know where we are, but but if they want to see us at Silicon, we will be there. So there's that. So we'll be at the San Jose one. We'll be there. We're Fanime every year, so we'll be at that. Yeah. So, but yeah, because Harmony Gold and them made a deal with the Japanese, we can also go ahead with a fan film, another Robotech story. So, I'm gonna do it. Just don't know what it's gonna be about. It's probably the trip to the Master's Home World. Yeah. Except in this version of the timeline, the Transformers interfered. So it's not gonna end the same way. It's not gonna be this epic space battle with the Sentinels. They're called the Sentinels, but not the Sentinels. It won't be. Yeah, it'll be a different timeline because it's different. It's changed. More like the Rebels, the Robotech Rebels. But yeah, and the Veritechs would be different too. Everything would be different because we kind of can't afford the old later ones. There are a lot of very creative fan projects out there. But they're awesome. But yeah, and there seems to be a large contingent of Robotech, Latin American Robotech guys that like the New Generation and Lancer and the songs and the mecha and stuff and some of the other stuff too. And they just like them some Cam Clark, I guess. Cam Clark, who is Lancer, and also Max Sterling. So there you go. Yeah. So. Robotech. Just shout out that San Diego Comic Con. You can watch the the thing until they pull it. I didn't put it up; it's someone else. And yeah, it's interesting it's interesting what they didn't say, other than what they showed on panels and things that they couldn't say, because they don't have anything to say. It's kind of still the same holding pattern in the air type of thing as before, but this time they have lifted the copyright ban on things. And I don't know why old Armagama, the guy that did the original Armagama, I don't know why he doesn't just lift it off. What's he going to do with it 40 years later? Come on, dude. Just let us have it. Just let us have Robotech all over the place. Come on. They'll do a lot better job. We won't even ask for money. We'll just do Robotech fan films with G.I. Joes. We won't ask for money, you know. Keep doing it. But yes, and there are claims to fame the Shadow Children. I think was the final one. We had Shadow's Return and Shadow Children. We had I think Shadow's Return. We had a Macross 7 homage in there, where I translated from the lyrics in Japanese the Firebomber. This Macross 7 was about Firebomber, which was this Japanese pop band in the story, kind of like Guns N' Roses crossed with J-pop, and they would sing a song and he would do the Minmay thing, but he's like a pop star. Max Sterling was the captain. Miria was the mayor, I guess. Yeah, so that. and they had a song, Firebomber Seventh Moon, the credit song. On the seventh moon. Yeah, and when I took the lyrics and I translated them into English, put them on there. Someone else did this too, but I think mine's. I tried to match it more with what he was saying with his words. So it's actually cool. He goes on in Japanese, and it was on the purple panorama of the galactic highway. A shooting star goes right through my heart. There. Yeah. Oh, palely shaking seventh moon. Why you make me so anxious? Really about the tenure of the beating drum. Oh yeah, and then the maddening dance. The maddening dance, which to the maddening drum. Anyway, so Macross 7 would be awesome if they released that on Nickelodeon or something. Like now, like years later, it's like this is Macross 7. It was never released over there. It's different though. It's from the perspective of the band, and even though they have like these spiritual vampires in it, and the battle's the same space battle over and over again until later in the season, and then they put up Sound Force, and Sound Force goes out and fights. But it's pretty much the same battle over and over again in the beginning because they didn't have a lot of space effects, but they had a lot of everything else. So it was about perspective of the band. The band in the Macross City area in the story, 1 million people on the ship, and the band is doing stuff. Yeah, that was set in 2046, I believe, something like that, 2045. Yeah. So quite a bit later on. We already crossed paths with them though in the other universe, because Macross was not originally connected to New Generation in Invid. Wasn't connected. And they even retconned themselves because in Tommy Yune's story, the Shadow Chronicle, they made the Hate Knights bad guys, and that didn't make any sense. So in our version of the Endless Circle, we basically said, you know what? They were a renegade Hate Knights. They weren't really all of them. Just a renegade group of Hate Knights got out, and they wanted to do bad stuff. That makes a whole lot more sense. It's like, just some of them were bad. All right. And they were misled by the Invid King, the Invid Regent, who had come back from the dead. Because he's basically an energy being. Of course, it didn't kill him. He just went, whoop. Yeah, none of the Invid technically would die. Even if you shot them and blew up their ship, they'd still just go, whoop, and they'd be energy, and they'd come back. And they were energy beings at the end, so they were like indestructible, really. Even Merlin technically wouldn't die. But yeah, they just messed up. Oh, and they get the date wrong too. They said it was 2044 in that story. This would be 2040, but all right. So there was some interesting moving around in there, and Love Live Alive from 2012. That was a rewrite of something I saw years ago. They added stuff. They added the silly Lancer as a child. They're gonna have a baby. Lancer, Zero was gonna have a baby with Lancer, and I was like, no, guys. Cam Clark's character Lancer in the Invid Invasion and the Japanese one is gay. He's not in love with Sierra at all. If anybody's going to be in love with, he's going to be in love with Scott Bernard. I'm not going to be in love with Sierra. Not at all. I mean, doesn't want girls. There was a lot of confusion about that. But the character, Camp Clark, I'm sure is straight, but in the story, he's playing someone else in it. But yeah. Because the Japanese were fascinated with drag queens back in the 80s. That was an 80s show, Robotech, with the 3 shows. Done by 1984 over there, but came over here by 85. Yeah. And we watched them incessantly, over and over again, for kids, because they kept coming in rerun. Then along with Transformers. They're on the same time. So. Yeah. So it was only a matter of time before they met up. And there was a crossover even in G1, Jetfire, Skyfire is a Veritech. And with this copyright thing having been lifted, this thing up, parts and toys and stuff, yeah. They're going to make toys again. Of course they're going to have a toy line. And hopefully they will be better quality than the Masterpiece Saga ones. Those were crap. I had one. I had a Masterpiece Red Veritech. It was crap. Anyways, it broke during filming. Anyway, that's all I got for today.